Hello, everybody. I hope you're all keeping well. I want to talk now about the state of Christianity in America. May be a strange thing for a pagan to be talking about, but it was brought into light in recent time with the conservative right and basically this kind of Presbyterian, well, not Presbyterian, but Protestant American revivalism in the wake of Charlie Kirk's funeral. And they were all saying that so many Americans have returned to church and churches are full. Well, you'll always get that kind of NPC thing, get with the winning team kind of thing. But in recent days, I've been actually looking at bits of that funeral, and I think it's been a catastrophe for the American Protestant Church. I think it'll be as much as a disaster on the right as the woke Anglican Church in England has been on the left. It will the biggest winners from the Charlie Kirk uh, funeral celebration, whatever it was, um, will be, if any Christianity gains from it, it'll be the Orthodox churches. It'll be Catholicism or the various Eastern Orthodox churches. It certainly won't be the Protestant churches. I keep saying Presbyterian. I mean the Protestant churches. Uh, Certainly not these kind of like the kind of Christian right of the Republican Party and all that bunch. I mean, it was probably Charlie Kirk's funeral was probably the most soulless thing I've ever seen in my life. Now, I'm not making fun of the man being murdered by Tyler Robinson and that crowd. I'm not anything like that. The whole thing was like a cul-de-sac of Jesus will take care of everything in the end, and completely unnatural in every way. I mean, it was literally showbiz. It was like, Charlie is dead with a Broadway melody in heaven with Jesus. It was literally like that. There were fireworks and pyrotechnics and everything. It was so soulless. This is why and so like what happens here is now Erica Kirk's. I can't. I mean, I know everyone has deals with grief in their own way, but she. I mean, I know women who lost their husbands and under tragic circumstances, and they don't behave like they won the Price is Right. The top prize on the Price is Right or Wheel of Fortune. Now you could say she's probably tranquilized and all this stuff as possible, but anyone I ever know on tranquilizers for something like that are usually catatonic. They're not, giddy and full of perky and full of sprightly and everything. I mean, it reminds me so much of the Jerry and Kate McCann behavior after their daughter went missing. The weird kind of celebrations they had in Praia de Luz down in Portugal, rather than like regular parents would be in states of absolute torment. Uh, and it's not for me to put myself in someone else's shoes, but I don't know these people that they live different. These like cultural elites these in America. I don't know, but I found it very peculiar. So it goes into this sort of like self-defeating cul-de-sac where you have to believe what Jesus has a plan for everyone. So she says she forgives his killer. Well, no, you don't forgive the killer. You destroy the killer and anyone who, under the Irish pagan Brehon laws, if Tyler Robinson is found guilty, not only does he just gets double killed where he gets executed and then is thrown into a bog where he can't reincarnate, but his family and everyone connected to him that was aware of what his behavior was like and did nothing or had a feeling he was going to do it would be paying compensation to the victims' families for the rest of their lives. Saying a prayer and saying that Jesus makes it okay isn't enough. And it's just like thing that he's gone to heaven. You know, I can't go there. I just can't deal with it. And so, for every American who goes, Lurleen, we got to get ourselves to church because we after Charlie Kirk's funeral was so inspiring. And then they go to some sermon where some guy's charging them money going, the pagan is the cause of all the world's problems, this kind of thing. And for every one of them in America, there's two or three others going, that I was very uncomfortable watching that showbiz funeral. That that Broadway spectacular passed off as Charlie Kirk's funeral inside a stadium. It was a show. It just was weird. Now I'm not saying there's any conspiracy. I take the actual official story at face value. There's nothing else. I mean, what people like Candace Owens are doing is just like dingbat. She's just again, she's doing that whole thing of connecting dots that just because she's acting like she's the one that has solved the case, like it's ridiculous. But so they, that's I'm not saying she shouldn't be doing that. She's entitled to it, but she hasn't produced any. No one has produced any proof of grand conspiracy. It's all wildly subjective. It's not like when 9/11 happened that we all looked at the Building 7 and then we behind the BBC reporter and then the passport that survived fire, and we had real hard evidence. We don't have anything like that in this case, and I also think that probably he's probably protect. I think if there's any kind of conspiracy that he wasn't the main shooter, and possibly one of his his good friends, his furry friends, was the real shooter, and he's covering for him. That would be the only conspiracy I see. But having said all that, you know, I just they'll be flabbergasted. Now, if they have a spiritual calling, now you know what I've always said over the years: if you're not a pagan, become a Catholic or an Orthodox. That's the next best thing. And if you're wherever your culture is, Greek, Russian, Armenian, Syrian, and I think a lot of people, if they do, they might spend time. You'll see an exodus now to the Catholic Church in America, just like you're seeing an enormous exodus into the Catholic Church in England. Did you know that? There's a massive amount of former Anglicans who probably would have stayed Anglicans if you didn't have lesbian bishops on the pulpit wearing rainbow flags talking about this is the house of Islam. Jesus built the house of Islam here for us. You wouldn't have had the mass exodus to the Catholic Church in England, and you get the same in, I think, but for a different reason in America. They'll go in, they'll look at that Charlie Kirk funeral, and they go, "That thing was just weird. There's no soul in that. I don't feel any spiritual element in there." And they're all these TV pundits on the right, whom I quite like. I mean, I like Megyn Kelly, I like. I like Tucker Carlson. I don't have a problem with these people. They don't bother me at all. I even like Naomi Wolf, but they're all like now blaming the pagans. It's like, what? Huh? Where'd this come from? And a lot of it has to do. Look, the way I see it is, I understand that many people became pagan because they had bad experiences where in their religious churches. They didn't. They saw through superficial bullshit like the kind of whole born again thing in Middle America. And often they become at first very anti-Christian. And I was kind of like that for a long time, and I still am. Like, I'll still point out, like, you guys did terrible things, but I'm not full of hate. I don't. I'll politely say, like, when a Christian starts going on about we were persecuted by pagans, I go, the roll of wallpaper. I'll just drop the wallpaper down and show just what happened in the early days of the empire against pagans. But it's done politely. It's not done to attack their faith or think they're retarded or something like that for believing in that stuff. It's purely to say, no, you're wrong. This is why someone like me would never be allowed at front of a camera with the likes of Charlie Kirk or not Charlie Kirk, sorry, the likes of Tucker Carl. Well, wouldn't have been able to hear him either. Not that he deserved to die, the man or anything, but it wouldn't have been allowed because they have a particular faction that they're locked into. But I'd never be, no way Tucker Carlson talked to me about it, or neither would Naomi Wolf or Megyn Kelly. They just wouldn't. They wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't. It just wouldn't be allowed. It wouldn't be. They like to talk about freedom of speech and stuff like that. But as long as you don't offer things that make them question their religious beliefs, which is very different than making them question their fate, I might add. And so. You'll never get these people, like the whole APAC thing in America and the obsession with, Jesus and Israel and all that. That's totally exploiting all these American Protestants. They all actually believe that shit. That's like, gee, they build the second temple, Jesus will come back, and the Mossad and all them totally exploit that, totally exploit it. It's just it's clear as day to anyone watching, and which is it's just another tool of espionage, another tool of statecraft and of nonlinear warfare. And in the same way, the Catholic Church did it to Ireland in the 1940s and 50s, where basically the bishops ran the country on behalf of cardinals in Rome, and the Irish were going around thinking that like the Pope and everyone was wonderful, while they were being raped en masse by the Christian Brothers and stuff like that, the industrial schools and all that. They were well. There was good things too, but they don't have eyes for the good stuff. They turn the eyes to the blind stuff. Also, like I can remember like as a young kid standing with my mother at a bus stop, and you would hear like older guys saying, "Did you read Bishop O'Connell's editorial in the Irish Independent, or have you read Father so and so's? Did you see his latest article in the evening press?" This kind of thing. They would be like talking about the something to do with the church and some government bill that was being passed. And I can remember, like, you'd even hear, like, I can remember when I was a very young kid in primary school, hearing two teachers talking about something to do with, I don't know what it was, some political issue. And the guy with a straight face who said this, he's probably in his 30s, said, well, what did the bishops, what's the bishop's statement on it? They actually believed all that stuff, it was weird. And and that all fell apart because that's why we said the best thing that ever happened in Ireland was the Catholic Church imploded. People say, okay, it brought up all this hedonism, but what it did create was the Catholics who remained were the real ones. It was almost like a distillation process that it got rid of all the phonies, and there's still lots of phonies who still go to mass only to get their kids into school and things like that. But and I saw a video a few years ago of a Catholic priest getting an electric motorcycle and an electric bicycle and cycling, and at the end of the mass cycled away from the altar through the audience all clapping and taking selfies. That's the Irish version of that American superficial Presbyterianism. Yeah, I mean, to me, a religious person has a depth of personality. A true believer has this depth of personality. It's almost overwhelming. And it doesn't matter what they believe. I've encountered in pagans, Hindus. I've even, an old Muslim guy that's like that. And there's a depth there. It's hard to explain. No, it's not hard to explain. It's obvious when you come. There's a godliness there that's not based on like I'm better than you because I'm this religion. You get that a lot in the American Presbyterian right. I'm saved, you're not, that kind of thing. There's a depth, and that was completely absent from what we saw with Charlie Kirk's funeral and all that stuff. What we saw was pure superficiality, like a Broadway show. You know, I can understand maybe, everybody's trying to be respectful, but I'm sure there's plenty of people on that stage who are like going, "This is a bit weird, isn't it? It's a bit," but they wouldn't say anything out of respect to the family, and that's quite right too. They're quite right to do that. But there's got to be a lot of Americans watching that funeral. We're going to go, "This thing was weird." It would have been very sympathetic towards. I mean, I'm sympathetic as well towards what happened to Charlie Kirk and his family. I don't understand why his wife is behaving the way she is, but that's not for me to analyze. I just don't get it. It's a cultural thing. I just don't know. I mean, maybe you have all ideas who've been through something similar or anything. To have your own ideas in the bottom, but it's just weird. It was just weird to me, and it was just the whole thing was weird. I know cultures are all different, but I don't see any spirit of God or any kind of spiritual undercurrent in any of that stuff I'm seeing. None of it. I'm very disturbed of how they've started to blame pagans. People who should know better, like Naomi Wolf, and even Tucker Carlson. He should know better. These people. It's very easy to educate yourself on these things. You never hear them talking about the crimes of the Christian religions and kingdoms and empires, which are horrific, as are the Abrahamic ones. I mean, a few years ago, I was talking to this dingbat who was trying to tell me that the Ottoman Empire was a good empire and it was good for people. My God, the Ottoman Empire was like the demons, the jinn unleashed upon Europe, the demons of the abyss, the actual treatment of non-Muslims by the Ottoman empires, and even like non-Turks. They were bigger butchers of the Palestinians than or whatever those people were in the Mandate than the Israel ever was. It was horrific, and they hated Berbers, everyone. They see what happens is Islam, because of its totality. As soon as it achieves dominance, it then fractures into who's a better Muslim than me, or better or less Muslim than you or me, and all these fractionalizations takes place, and not just between Shia and Sunni, but also interethnic things happen after they've killed all the minorities. No, the Ottoman Empire was a monstrous beast. You still have idiots in Ireland talking about the the crest of Drogheda, the city here in Ireland, is because the Ottomans helped the starving there. It's nothing. It was the crest of a family. It was nothing to do with the Star and Crescent of Islam. This was there for something like 800 years before the Ottoman Empire even existed, or something like that. But yeah, I don't think this whole thing is like Charlie Kirk is now sort of something like that. They're selling him as a kind of like conservative John the Baptist or Saint John the Evangelist. He's going to bring everybody back into the churches. No, I think there'll be a small period, but you'll have a small period of that where you'll have them like going, I'm going, go, don't go, Jesus, Lurleen, and all these types, or these like, these white breads in the suburbs doing it because all their neighbours are doing it. But that'll peter out after a while. But you'll have some that will be genuinely. You see, you don't have. Here's the whole thing. You don't have religious experiences in churches. Well, maybe you do in some, like the old, sort of like beautiful Catholic churches, but like you don't have them. Even Catholics don't have them there. You have a religious epiphany or experience, and regardless of what the religion is, outside of those places. So you may be just like hiking up in the mountains with your mates one day, and you look at the sun going down over the Sierra Nevadas, and you're in the Mojave Desert or something, and you're filled with this sense of like, oh my God, there's a bigger thing here than just me hiking here, and or you'll look into the eyes of a child that you've raised, and when they're getting married, and say, I brought that child all through this life to this point where they're now married and have family of their own. It's things like that. It's happened with people seeing artwork like the Pieta, the statue that Michelangelo carved of Mary, of Mary holding her dying son Jesus. And it's not because of it's Mary and Jesus, it's because a mother holding the dead body of her son killed in front of her. Now, they tried to, it's funny, that just popped into my head. But you compare the emotion that Michelangelo, who didn't particularly even like Christianity, the Catholic Church, put into that, and it was gay, put into that statue of the Pieta, of a mother's love for her dying son, and you compare that to Erica Kirk's high strangeness over Charlie Kirk's body in the casket, and you'll understand why they're all going to return to Orthodox religions like Catholicism. Okay, if they don't become pagans, which the good ones do. I shouldn't have said that. Take care.